Check out my newest pattern made for lost foam casting. Guys, in this video, I'm going to show you how I made this pattern. This is not like my normal patterns where I just carved it out with my CNC. I actually made these pieces, each using my hot wire cutter and creating a pattern out of just simple paper. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit series, that's where this came from. This is from the Hobbit. This is Azog, the Pale Orc's mace. So I just recently watched the movie and I was like, I'm gonna try to make that. This is some serious stuff. I wanna see if I can, because I like to make different things and I like to challenge myself. Now in a recent video, I did some tests. I wanted to see if I could wrap or cast aluminum around a steel pipe. That test was for this video. Now, unfortunately, I don't think my crucible can hold enough aluminum to actually cast this in aluminum. So it might have to be a video that's going to happen in the future, maybe not the near future. But if you subscribe, you'll get to see it sometime. And also, when I do make the video in the future, I will leave that link in the description below. So guys, let's get to the video and I will show you how to make this and I'll do a voiceover. So that's the Pale Orc and this is the mace. And this is the picture I use as a still shot to draw or sketch out the pattern. So I thought making the length 8 inches would be a good size, and I thought at the time that I'd be able to cast it. So after making that pattern of the polygon, I then realized, you know what, it's not exactly how I want it. This one is my second drawing on a thicker piece of paper that will actually help out with cutting out the piece out of foam using my hot wire cutter. Now that it's all drawn up and I think it matches the mace head pretty good, it's time to just cut out that pattern with simple scissors. And I do really think I did a good job on sketching this up to look like the original. So the foam I'm using is Owens Corning Polystyrene XPS. This piece is 1/2 inch thick. This is the best foam to use for lost foam casting because it's really dense. So next I wanted to cut out 8 by 4 inch pieces of foam individually because I'm going to cut them out individually for each fin. And cutting out smaller pieces is much easier to handle than cutting out the large board. Now I'm going to use Elmer's craft glue to temporarily have this pattern stick to the foam. So I'm going to rub on a decent amount, basically on the edges, and I'm going to stick it to the foam board. I'm going to let it set there for only a couple minutes before I actually take it to the hot wire cutter. Once you're at the hot wire cutter, you can just follow the paper. This is the reason I use a thicker sheet of paper, because it's not really flimsy and it allows the hot wire to run along the side of it and carve out the foam very easily. Now that I showed you guys how easy it is to cut it, I'm going to now remove this piece of paper and do this to 5 more fins. And this is another reason why you need to use thicker paper, because you're just reusing the pattern and it will last a lot longer. So now I have all 6 fins carved out and it's time to put an edge to them, because who wants a mace with flat ends? Nobody. So I'm going to set my hot wire cutter to an angle that will give me the angle that I need, which is roughly a 45-degree angle, and it will now slice the edges into the 45. And then I'll do one side, and after the other side, I'll flip over the foam and do the other side. That will give us the perfect edge. I will do this to every fin and almost every flat part on the fin, except for the back, because the back is where I need to glue it to the base. And the base is the middle, and that's going to be where I need to connect the 3/4 inch pipe to. and you're going to see that shortly. But check out what a nice job that 45 is on this mace head. So in the beginning, like I said, I did an experiment with putting a pipe inside of a foam ring. So I'm designing the exact same one with different dimensions using a free program called Inkscape. And now that that's finished, I'm now carving that design out with my Fox Alien Masuder 4040. Now, this does only carve out 1 inch, so I had to carve out 4 separate ones and then have to glue them all together to get the length needed. So I went to Home Depot because I needed to get two things. I needed a 3/4 inch piece of pipe that was 4.5 inches long and a 3/4 inch coupling. Now that I had the 4.5 inch nipple, now it was time to glue these pieces together one by one. And I'm using the Fast Grab Tacky Glue by Aline. It does take 24 hours to dry, but it tacks up very quickly. So I just applied the glue, put it on, pushed it together, and lined up the lines the best that I could, because that's kind of important. And now that all the pieces are glued together, I let it dry overnight and I sanded down the flat spots a little bit better than they were before, because a flatter spot makes it much easier to glue the fin to. So again, I'm going to put on the Aline's Fast Grab Tacky Glue and I'm going to line the fin up the best I can onto the center. And this is the part where it takes quite a while to do. Because now that I got that one fin glued up, I let that sit overnight before adding any other fins to it. Because I really wanted to make sure it was in place and I didn't want it to move. And it actually worked out pretty good. I'm really in no hurry to do this. So after a day, I did another fin on the opposite side, and now you can really get a look at the gaps in the foam, and I really wanted to fill that. So what I did was I ran a bead across the gap, again using the same glue. Then I used a tool that has a ball end on the tip to smooth out the glue. I didn't film it, but it also helps to run your finger along it as well to remove any of the excess glue that was pushed out from the ball tipped tool I used. So I'm going to do the same thing to each fin. Apply the glue and try to get it placed onto the centerpiece as best you can. And after the first two fins, I then slid the piece of pipe in the center because it actually really helped out with drying it and keeping this stable. Then I carved out with my CNC my logo, and the logo is going to be glued on right over the hole on the top. So now all 5 fins are now dried with the cap on the top with my logo, and I only have one more fin left to put on. It's really exciting when you start to see your project come together. So I glued the last fin on with the same glue as before and placed it onto the centerpiece, and then I clamped it down to the table facing in an upward position to let it dry overnight. Doing it this way helps me make sure that the fin doesn't fall over, even though this glue is very good. And after 24 hours, I then removed it from the pipe to get a better look at it, and all of the fins look like they're aligned perfectly. So it's now time to push the 3/4 inch piece of pipe all the way in to the foam pattern. Because before I only had it in a little bit. Because it was a little bit snug and I didn't want it to get stuck in there just in case I needed to remove it. Well, that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video on making this foam pattern for lost foam casting. I really can't wait to make this into solid aluminum, but it's going to have to wait because, like I said, I don't have the equipment to do it at this time.